is far from over. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee and a representative for Washington's 9th District. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
First, let's just get your reaction on this deal that has been made in the Senate, even though it does not hold out for what Democrats have been wanting for, the extension of these subsidies.
Well, I'm disappointed because I think the issues that we were fighting on were really important. I think we were fighting on them effectively. You know, health care for the American people. The fact that the subsidies going away is going to knock millions of people off of health insurance, drive up the costs. I thought that was a really important issue. I think also highlighting that Donald Trump isn't interested in helping the American people, that he was getting rid of the SNAP, that he was doing everything in his power not to give food to hungry people. So I thought we were on winning ground, at least from a messaging standpoint. But I will say, look, the shutdown was having a profound impact. You know, federal employees not getting paid. Many were struggling to pay their rent, pay their mortgages. We've seen the impacts at the airport, obviously the holdup on the SNAP benefits. So I understand what the Senate did. And also I want people to understand the idea that if we just held out for another week or two, this would have forced the Republicans to actually care about health care. I mean, we fought for they made it pretty clear that they weren't going to do that. So no, I'm not going to vote for this deal. I think we should hold out and keep fighting. But I think we should also recognize what has been accomplished in terms of focusing on the right issues and, frankly, exposing Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and the House Republicans for how callous they are towards issues that are really important to the American people.
I heard one voter on one of the national news programs this morning described as sort of a pinky swear, thinking that the Democrats caved and should have held out longer. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I think that's the wrong way of looking at it, because if that is your way of looking at it, then it implies that if we had held out longer, then we would have gotten something substantive out of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And again, I think after 40 days, they made it very clear that they did not care and they weren't going to do anything on the issue. Now, I think the issue is important enough that we should have kept fighting. But don't lose track of the fact that for 40 days, we really shifted the attention of the American people on issues that were really important, on health care, on the authoritarian nature of the way Trump is governing. You know, the fact that he's, you know, knocking down the East Wing and building this thing up and having a great Gatsby party down in Florida while prices keep going up. He said he was going to solve that. Now he says he doesn't care. I think focusing on those issues and building a large enough coalition to push back, I mean, that's helpful. That's what we need. It's a long fight. I wish it was a short one. I wish there was one thing we could do to stop this, but it's a longer fight. Now, again, I think we should have kept fighting on this particular ground, but I don't agree with that analysis. So we just caved. What was the point? The point was very important. It continues to be.
I want to talk about the strikes in the Pacific. Yeah. There have been 19 so far. 75 people have been killed. I know you were briefed last week. Did you get any evidence about these boats that have been targeted or the people who have died? Any evidence suggesting that they were legitimate?
Well, yeah, legitimate in the sense that in all likelihood, these were people trafficking cocaine. Okay, that was probably the case. But they have still not they've not shown us their work, which they typically do for the House Armed Services Committee. As the ranking member, that's why I get the brief, or the Intel Committee. They haven't given us the data that shows why these particular people, these particular boats were so key to it. And furthermore, even if what they said was true, these boats were primarily heading to Europe, and it's cocaine, not fentanyl. And how does striking these boats significantly blunt what's going on in the U.S. in terms of a drug problem? And lastly, what they didn't do was show us that any of this was legal. To use lethal...
That was my next question. Is it legal?
Lethal kinetic strikes on drug dealers. Basically, Donald Trump has decided the death penalty for drug dealing, and he's the judge, jury, and executioner. That is a massive expansion of presidential power that I don't think is legal, and I think we should block.
What is the objective if there is no fentanyl connection to the United States? The drugs are going to Europe, and it's cocaine and not fentanyl. What is the president's objective with these strikes?
I asked that very specific question in the little time I had of the 12 of us that were sitting there, and it's not really clear. They would say broadly their objective is you have these narco-terrorist groups, which are a huge problem, no doubt about it, not just the drugs. They do human trafficking, they're destabilizing governments. What they didn't show is how blowing up a few boats in international waters in Latin America is going to significantly alter that problem. And then you've got the illegality part, but they would say it is to weaken these narco-terrorist groups. But there's very little evidence that this is going to have that effect.
I keep hearing rumblings of pushing for a regime change in Venezuela, potentially even putting American boots on the ground there. What do you know about that? And is there a connection here?
They specifically denied that that was the case. They also specifically denied that they had any plans to do territorial strikes, because all the strikes right now are in international waters. If you hit someone on land, then that is an attack on a sovereign nation. At the same time, though, we've heard President Trump say the exact opposite. Say that he wants the Maduro regime out, that he's talking about doing strikes in Venezuela. So what we were told, and it was Secretary Hegseth and Secretary Rubio who briefed us, was, oh, no, 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 no. What you're hearing from Trump is different. And to have that type of mixed message, spending this amount of money, killing people without a clear objective, I don't think that is the policy the United States should be doing.
And Congress has not stopped them from doing that, even though there have been votes on this very thing. I want to move to one more topic.
Sure.
Big Democratic wins last week. What do you think that says about momentum of the Democratic Party, and how should Democrats leverage those wins moving forward, looking at the midterms?
A few big things. It says we're on the right track, but we still got a long way to go. I mean, Trump is still, president. Republicans control the House, the Senate. We got a long way to go. And what I think it says is the key is to build as large a coalition as possible. And that, I think, is something that we struggle with. We got a big coalition. Every piece of that coalition is fairly well convinced that they're absolutely right and this is what we should do. We need them all. And, we had the contrast. There's a lot of focus on Mondami, a socialist winning the mayorship in New York. New York's a very liberal city, not surprising. But we also had Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill winning key governorships. We swept state house races in Virginia. And I think that's a huge positive because it shows the big tent. Yes, we elected someone way on the left. We also elected centrist, common sense, practical problem-solving leaders over here. That's what we're going to have to do. It's going to have to be a big tent. And part of a big tent is there's going to be things you don't agree with. And you got to figure out how to work together to get through that. So we got a lot of work to do, but it was a huge positive step after a very, very tough year.
Congressman Adam Smith, we so appreciate you taking the time to be in here to explain it to us.
It was good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks.
Good to see you.
We have much more ahead tonight. A former